Seven-time Formula One world champion Sir Lewis Hamilton has it all: fame, fortune, and fast cars. But on a rainy night before the British Grand Prix, when his electric Mercedes breaks down on a country road, Lewis stumbles into a gas station where he makes a discovery that will change his life. The man working the night shift is Jamie Fletcher, the childhood friend who once stood between Lewis and the Bullies who targeted him for being mixed race. The same friend who believed in Lewis's racing dreams when no one else did. The same friend who Lewis lost touch with 25 years ago as their paths dramatically diverged. Now, as Lewis stands face to face with the friend he left behind, he's confronted with the true cost of success and the realization that while he was conquering the racing world, Jamie was fighting battles of his own, including defending Lewis's name long after he was gone. What begins as a chance encounter evolves into a powerful journey of redemption, reconciliation, and the discovery that sometimes the most important person in your life is the one who believed in you before anyone else did, even when you forgot to believe in them. Lewis Hamilton clutched his backpack straps tightly as he walked through the gates of Pertwee Junior School in Stevenage. The 8-year-old boy tried to make himself smaller, hoping no one would notice him. It wasn't that Lewis was shy, he just wanted to avoid the 3 fifth graders who seemed to wait for him every morning. "There he is," a voice called out. "Hamilton, what are you today? Too brown to be white? Too white to be brown?" Lewis kept his eyes on the ground, counting the cracks in the pavement. 1, 2, 3. His dad had taught him to ignore the mean words, to focus on what mattered. And what mattered to Lewis was racing. In his mind, he wasn't walking to class. He was driving a Formula One car, just like Ayrton Senna, his hero. The Brazilian driver had won 3 world championships, and Lewis had watched every race he could on TV. Sometimes, his dad would wake him up early on Sundays to watch the races together. "Hey, I'm talking to you!" The tallest boy stepped in front of Lewis, blocking his path. 2 others flanked him, creating a wall of sneering faces. Lewis gripped his backpack tighter. Inside was his most prized possession, a model of Senna's McLaren MP4-6. His dad had helped him build it last weekend, showing him how to paint the red and white details just right. "Leave him alone, Mark." A boy with messy brown hair and freckles stepped between Lewis and the Bullies. "Don't you have anything better to do?" Lewis recognized the boy from his class, Jamie Fletcher. He wasn't the biggest kid, but he had a way of standing that made him seem taller. "What's it to you, Fletcher?" Mark sneered. "You his bodyguard now?" Jamie crossed his arms. "Maybe I just think you're being stupid. So what if he looks different? He's faster than all of us in PE." The school bell rang, saving them from whatever might have happened next. The Bullies shuffled off, but not before Mark bumped Lewis's shoulder hard. "Thanks," Lewis mumbled, as they headed toward their classroom. Jamie shrugged. "No big deal. Those guys are jerks to everyone." He glanced at Lewis's backpack. "What have you got in there? You're carrying it like it's made of gold." Lewis hesitated, then carefully unzipped his backpack and showed Jamie the model car. "Whoa!" Jamie's eyes widened. "That's Senna's McLaren. Did you make this?" For the first time that day, Lewis smiled. "My dad helped. Do you watch F1? Every race I can. My dad lets me stay up late for the ones in different time zones." Jamie studied the model car. "This is brilliant work. The details are perfect." They slid into their seats just as their teacher, Mrs. Phillips, began taking attendance. Lewis felt lighter somehow. Maybe school wouldn't be so bad today after all. After school, Lewis sat on the steps waiting for his dad. Anthony Hamilton worked multiple jobs, sometimes as a contractor, sometimes putting up posters for events. Anything to make extra money. Most of that money went to Lewis's karting, a fact that made Lewis both proud and worried. "Is that your dad?" Jamie asked, sitting down beside him. Lewis spotted the familiar car pulling up. "Yeah, that's him." "Lucky," Jamie said. "My mom's always late." Lewis hesitated, then asked, "Do you want to come with us? We're going to Rye House Kart Circuit. I have practice." Jamie's eyes lit up. "Really? I've always wanted to go there." Lewis's dad rolled down the window as he pulled up. "Who's your friend, Lewis?" "This is Jamie. Can he come watch me practice?" Anthony Hamilton looked tired after a long day of work, but he smiled. "If his parents say it's okay." Jamie borrowed Lewis's dad's mobile phone, a bulky thing that fascinated both boys, and called his mom. After some convincing and Anthony getting on the phone to reassure her, Jamie got permission. The drive to the kart track was filled with racing talk. Lewis was surprised how much Jamie knew about Formula One, karting, and engines. His dad seemed impressed too, answering Jamie's questions about torque and downforce with patience. At Rye House, Lewis changed into his racing suit while Jamie watched from the sidelines with Anthony. Lewis felt nervous knowing his new friend was watching, but as soon as he climbed into his kart, the world faded away. The engine vibrated beneath him, the steering wheel firm in his hands. This was where Lewis belonged, not in the playground, dodging bullies, but here, on the track, where speed and skill were all that mattered. He pulled his helmet on and gave a thumbs up to his dad. As Lewis drove onto the track, he caught a glimpse of Jamie watching with wide eyes. Something about that made Lewis sit up straighter, push a little harder. Lap after lap, Lewis shaved seconds off his time. The kart responded to his commands, like it was an extension of his body. When he finally pulled into the pit area, his dad was beaming. "That's your best time yet, Lewis." Anthony clapped him on the shoulder. Jamie stood nearby, mouth slightly open. "That was amazing! You're so fast." Lewis couldn't stop smiling as he removed his helmet. "Thanks. I've been practicing a lot." "A lot?" Anthony laughed. "This boy would sleep in his cart if I let him." Later, as they sat eating chips from the track's small canteen, Jamie asked, "How did you get so good?" Lewis thought about it. "My dad says it's about putting in the hours and believing you can do it." He paused. "Even when people say you can't." Jamie nodded, understanding passing between them. "Those kids at school? They're just jealous. They'll never be as good as you at anything." Anthony, who had been checking his watch and calculating how much overtime he'd need to work that week to cover Lewis's next race entry fee, looked up. "That's right. You boys remember that. It doesn't matter where you come from or what you look like. What matters is what you do with the chances you get." As the sun began to set over the Hertfordshire countryside, casting long shadows across the track, Lewis felt a strange certainty. One day, he would race on bigger tracks, in faster cars, and somehow, having Jamie believe in him made that dream seem even more possible. "Same time tomorrow?" Jamie asked as they packed up. Lewis looked at his dad, hopeful. Anthony Hamilton sighed, but his eyes were kind. "I suppose we could give your mum a ring, see if she'd mind." That night, Lewis carefully placed his model McLaren on the shelf above his bed. Next to it, he put his trophy from last weekend's karting race. It wasn't much, just a small plastic cup with a gold-colored cart on top. But to Lewis, it was just the first of many. As he drifted off to sleep, he wasn't thinking about the bullies or the cracks in the school pavement. He was thinking about the track, the speed, and his new friend who didn't seem to care that Lewis looked different from the other kids. For the first time in a long while, Lewis Hamilton fell asleep smiling. The next 3 years flew by in a blur of race tracks, trophies, and after-school adventures. Lewis and Jamie became inseparable, bound by their love of racing and mutual protection. When Lewis wasn't on the track, the boys spent hours racing remote-controlled cars around makeshift tracks in Lewis's backyard. Jamie never missed one of Lewis's karting races, even when it meant taking 3 buses to get there. By the time Lewis turned 11, he had won countless karting championships. Newspaper clippings about the Stevenage Speedster filled a scrapbook his father kept. While other parents displayed their children's artwork on the refrigerator, Anthony Hamilton proudly posted race results and lap times. "He's special," Lewis tweeted. Overheard his dad telling Jamie's mother one Saturday after a particularly impressive win. "McLaren's been watching him. Ron Dennis himself came to see him race last month." Lewis pretended not to hear, but his heart pounded. Ron Dennis was the boss of the McLaren Formula One team, the same team his hero Ayrton Senna had raced for. The following weekend, Lewis and Jamie sat cross-legged on Lewis's bedroom floor, flipping through racing magazines. "When you're in Formula One," Jamie said matter-of-factly, "can I come to the races?" Lewis looked up. "When?" "Yeah, when, not if." Jamie pointed to a picture of Michael Schumacher celebrating a win. "That'll be you someday, and I'll be there cheering louder than anyone." Lewis smiled, but something heavy settled in his stomach. "Dad says it costs a lot of money to race, and we don't have a lot." Jamie shrugged. "Your dad figures it out. He always does." Lewis nodded, hoping his friend was right. The night before, he'd heard his father arguing with his stepmom about money again. Racing wasn't getting cheaper as Lewis moved up through the karting ranks. The day everything changed started like any other. Lewis woke up early, packed his racing gear, and waited for his dad to drive him to a race at PF International Kart Circuit. Jamie was supposed to meet them there, but when Lewis and his dad arrived at the track, a sleek black car was parked in the paddock area. A tall man in a crisp white shirt stood beside it. "Lewis," his father said, his voice unusually serious, "that's Ron Dennis." Lewis froze. He'd seen Ron Dennis from afar before, but the man had never approached them. "Remember what I told you," his father whispered as they walked toward the McLaren boss. "Be respectful. Look him in the eye when you speak." Ron Dennis extended his hand first to Anthony, then to Lewis. His grip was firm, his gaze direct. "I've been watching your progress, young man," Ron said. "Impressive stuff." Lewis mumbled a thank you, his mouth suddenly dry. "We'd like to talk to you about joining our young driver program," Ron continued. "It would mean proper coaching, better equipment, a clear path to Formula One." Lewis's heart thumped so loudly he was sure everyone could hear it. "Really?" Ron Dennis smiled slightly. "Really? But it would also mean total commitment. School, physical, training, and racing. Nothing else." Lewis nodded eagerly. "I can do that." "We'd need to discuss the details," Ron said to Anthony. "Perhaps after Lewis's race today?" As the men talked logistics, Lewis spotted Jamie arriving with his mother. He raced over, unable to contain his excitement. "Jamie! Guess what? McLaren wants me in their young driver program." Jamie's eyes widened. "The McLaren? Like Formula One McLaren?" Lewis nodded, bouncing on his toes. "Ron Dennis is here. He came to watch me race." Jamie looked past Lewis at the tall man in conversation with Anthony Hamilton. "Whoa." His voice dropped to a whisper. "Does this mean you're going to be a real racing driver? Like, professionally?" "I think so," Lewis said, suddenly feeling the weight of what was happening. But Ron said I'd have to be totally focused on racing. I'd have special training and everything. Something flickered across Jamie's face. Happiness mixed with something else. That's amazing, Louis. Exactly what you've always wanted. Louis was about to respond when his father called him over. It was time to get ready for his race. "Watch me today," Louis told Jamie. "I'm going to drive better than ever." And he did. With Ron Dennis watching from the sidelines, Louis drove the race of his young life, finishing nearly 5 seconds ahead of his nearest competitor. After the trophy presentation, Louis found Jamie waiting by the carts. "You were brilliant," Jamie said, grinning. "Like a proper F1 driver already." Louis beamed, but before he could reply, his father appeared. "Louis, Ron wants to speak with us again. It's important." Jamie stepped back. "I'll catch you later, yeah?" Louis nodded, following his father to where Ron Dennis stood waiting. 2 weeks later, Louis sat on his bed surrounded by packing boxes. His racing trophies were carefully wrapped in newspaper, his clothes folded neatly. The McLaren Young Driver program meant moving closer to their headquarters in Woking, which meant leaving Stevenage, leaving Jamie. The doorbell rang, and Louis heard his father greeting Jamie and his mother downstairs. He took a deep breath before heading down to meet them. Jamie stood awkwardly in the living room, holding a small package. "I got you something," he mumbled, holding it out. "For good luck." Louis unwrapped it carefully. Inside was a model of Mika Häkkinen's McLaren from 1998, the year Häkkinen won the Formula One World Championship with the team Louis would now be part of. "Jamie," Louis whispered, running his fingers over the detailed paintwork. "It's perfect. I just wanted you to have something to remember." Jamie's voice cracked slightly. "To remember where you started." Louis looked up to see tears in his friend's eyes, which made his own vision blur. "I've got news too," Jamie said quickly, blinking hard. "Dad got a job in Manchester. We're moving next month." Louis felt like someone had punched him in the stomach. "Manchester? But that's so far away." Jamie nodded. "Yeah, but it's a better job. More money. Mom says we need it." The boys stood in silence, the weight of their changing lives pressing down on them. "We'll keep in touch," Louis said finally. "I'll call you all the time. And when I get to Formula One, you'll come to all my races, just like you said." Jamie tried to smile. "I'll be your biggest fan. Always have been. Always will be." There, mothers watched from the doorway, exchanging knowing glances. Childhood friendships were precious but fragile things. "We should write letters," Jamie suggested. "Like pen pals," Louis nodded enthusiastically. "And I'll send you pictures from races." They made more promises. Calls every week. Visits during holidays, reunions when they were older. In their young hearts, they truly believed distance couldn't change what they'd built. That night, after Jamie left, Louis carefully placed the McLaren model next to his bed. His future was racing toward him faster than he could have imagined. McLaren, Formula One, World Championships, everything he'd dreamed about. But as the setting sun cast long shadows across his half-empty room, Louis felt a strange emptiness. He picked up the model car Jamie had given him, turning it over in his hands. Louis knew what it had cost Jamie to save up for this gift, just as he knew what it had cost Jamie to stand up for him all those times in the playground. His friend had given him courage when he needed it most. "I won't forget," Louis whispered to the empty room. "I promise." But life had other plans for both boys. The demands of the McLaren program consumed Louis completely. Daily training, special schooling, weekend races all over Europe. The promised phone calls became less frequent, the letters shorter and fewer between. Jamie's life in Manchester took its own direction. New school, new friends, new routines that didn't revolve around karting schedules and race results. By the time Lewis turned 13, the daily connection had faded to occasional birthday cards and Christmas greetings. By 15, even those had stopped. The boys who had once shared dreams and defending each other against bullies were walking separate paths, their once solid friendship becoming a childhood memory, filed away like old race programs and school photos. Life moved forward, and so did they. And Lewis Hamilton crosses the line to win the Monaco Grand Prix. That's victory number 99 in Formula One for the 7-time world champion. Lewis powered his Mercedes across the finish line, the familiar rush of victory flowing through him. Monaco, the race every driver dreamed of winning. The narrow streets, the glamour, the history, and he just conquered it for the 3rd time in his career. Get in there, Lewis. Brilliant drive, mate! His race engineer's voice crackled through the radio. Lewis tapped the steering wheel in thanks. At 36 years old, he had achieved more than he'd ever dreamed possible as that karting kid from Stevenage. 7 world championships, equaling Michael Schumacher's record. 99 race wins, countless pole positions, and sometimes it still didn't feel real. After the podium celebrations, the champagne spray, the royal handshakes, the media interviews, Lewis retreated to his luxury apartment overlooking the harbor. Monaco had been his home for years now, a far cry from the modest house in Stevenage where he'd grown up. "Great race today," his assistant said, handing him a protein shake and his phone. "Your father called, and you have 16 messages from celebrities congratulating you." Lewis nodded, scrolling through the names. Movie stars, musicians, other athletes, people who once seemed untouchable to a mixed-race kid from a working-class family. "Thanks. I'll return Dad's call first." His relationship with Anthony had changed over the years. The father who had worked multiple jobs to fund his son's racing dreams was no longer his manager. They'd separated professionally in 2010, a painful but necessary step in Lewis's growth. Their personal relationship had taken years to rebuild, but they were in a good place now. "Lewis! Brilliant race, son!" Anthony's voice boomed through the phone. "Reminded me of your karting days, so smooth through the corners." Lewis smiled, settling onto his balcony overlooking the Mediterranean. "Thanks, Dad. I was thinking about those days too, actually." "Were you now?" There was a knowing tone in Anthony's voice. "Any particular reason?" Lewis watched the sunset painting the water in shades of gold and pink. "I don't know. Been feeling nostalgic lately. Thinking about the beginning. About Stevenage. About Jamie." The name hit Lewis like an unexpected corner. Jamie Fletcher. The boy who had stood up for him, given him confidence when he needed it most. "How did you know?" Anthony chuckled. "You two were inseparable back then. He believed in you before anyone else did, except maybe me." "I wonder what happened to him," Lewis said quietly. "You could find out. You're Lewis Hamilton. You can find anyone you want to." Lewis nodded, though his father couldn't see him. It was true. With his resources, his connections, he probably could track down Jamie Fletcher. But something had always stopped him. Perhaps the fear that Jamie would resent him for how their friendship had faded. Or maybe the worry that Jamie's life hadn't turned out well. "Maybe someday," Lewis said. "Hey, speaking of the past, I'm heading back to the UK this week. Silverstone test, then the race next month. Will I see you?" "Definitely. I want to talk." to you about the Hamilton Commission's latest findings, too. The Hamilton Commission, Lewis's project to improve diversity in motorsport, had become as important to him as racing itself. As the only black driver in Formula One's history, Lewis had faced barriers that went beyond the normal challenges of the sport. Now he was determined to change that for the next generation. "Proud of you, son," Anthony said. "For everything, not just the racing." After the call ended, Lewis sat alone on his balcony as night fell over Monaco. Below him, super yachts bobbed in the harbor, their lights twinkling like stars. In the distance, he could see the famous casino where the rich and famous gambled away fortunes. This was his world now. A world of private jets, red carpets, multi-million-dollar contracts, and homes in luxury tax havens. A world where people knew his name in every country he visited. And yet, sometimes, in quiet moments like this, Lewis felt a strange emptiness. He'd achieved everything he'd dreamed of as a child, and much more. He'd proven wrong every person who, said a boy from his background, couldn't make it in Formula One. He'd used his platform to speak out on issues that mattered: racial equality, environmental protection, animal rights. But there were times when he missed the simplicity of those early days. The pure joy of racing, without the weight of expectations. The friendship that had made him feel safe in a world that often made him feel different. Lewis picked up his phone and opened Instagram. His latest post, a picture from today's podium, already had millions of likes. Comments poured in from around the world, fans expressing their adoration in dozens of languages. He scrolled mindlessly through his feed, past the carefully curated images of celebrities and fellow athletes. Then, on impulse, he opened the search bar and typed, "Jamie Fletcher." Thousands of results appeared. Too many to sort through. Too common a name to find the one person he was looking for. Lewis closed the app with a sigh. Maybe it was better this way. People from your past stayed in the past for a reason. Life moved on. People changed. His phone buzzed with a text from his trainer. 6 a.m., workout tomorrow? Need to keep that championship form. Lewis texted back a thumbs-up emoji. Seats, routine of elite athleticism would continue tomorrow, just as it had for the past 20 years of his life. The sacrifice required to stay at the top never ended. Before going to bed, Lewis walked to a small safe hidden in his bedroom closet. Inside were his most precious possessions, things too valuable to leave out even in his secure apartment. He removed a small wooden box and opened it carefully. Inside was the model of Mika Häkkinen's McLaren that Jamie had given him all those years ago. Despite all his moves, from Stevenage to Woking, from England to Switzerland, from Switzerland to Monaco, Lewis had kept it safe. He ran his finger over the tiny silver car, remembering the day Jamie had given it to him. The tears they'd both tried to hide. The promises to stay in touch that life had slowly eroded. "I never forgot," Lewis whispered to the empty room. "Not really." 3 days later, Lewis was back in England, driving his electric Mercedes through the Northamptonshire countryside toward the Silverstone circuit. The track was as familiar to him as his own reflection. Every curve, every straight, every bump in the tarmac. Silverstone was where he'd won his first British Grand Prix in 2008, in the pouring rain. The crowd had roared his name as he crossed the finish line, a sound that still echoed in his memory. Now, he was here for a test session before the actual race weekend in July. The British Grand Prix was always special. His home race, his fans, his country. As he pulled into the paddock entrance, Lewis felt the familiar pre-race focus settling over him. This was what he was born to do. This was where he belonged. Yet as he greeted his engineers and prepared for the day's testing, a part of his mind kept drifting back to that model McLaren, to Jamie Fletcher, to beginnings and paths not taken. "You okay, Lewis?" His performance, coach asked, noting his distraction. Lewis nodded, pulling himself back to the present. "Never better. Let's make this the best British Grand Prix yet." But even as he said it, Lewis couldn't shake the feeling that something was pulling him back to his past. Something unfinished. Something waiting to be rediscovered. 2 weeks later, Lewis returned to Silverstone for the British Grand Prix weekend. Friday practice had gone well. His Mercedes felt balanced, responsive. A proper racing car again after some difficult races earlier in the season. Saturday's qualifying had been even better. Pole position by 0.3 of a second. A massive margin in Formula One terms. Everything was going perfectly. So why couldn't he sleep? Lewis tossed and turned in his hotel room near the circuit. The digital clock on the nightstand showed 1:17 a.m. In less than 12 hours, he'd be on the starting grid for his home race. He needed rest, but his mind wouldn't quiet down. After another 20 minutes of staring at the ceiling, Lewis gave up. He pulled on a black hoodie over his t-shirt and sweatpants, grabbed his car keys, and slipped out of his room. The hotel hallway was silent. Most of the other drivers and team members would be sound asleep, conserving energy for race day. Chucked. Night security guard at the hotel entrance looked up in surprise as Lewis approached. "Everything all right, Mr. Hamilton?" Lewis nodded. "Just need some fresh air. Going for a drive." "At this hour, sir," Lewis smiled. "Best time. No traffic." Outside, a light summer rain was falling, giving the parking lot a glossy sheen under the street lights. Lewis climbed into his dark green Mercedes electric sports car, specially designed to be more environmentally friendly than most luxury vehicles. He had no particular destination in mind, just away. Away from the pressure of tomorrow's race. Away from the constant buzz of being Lewis Hamilton. The roads around Silverstone were quiet at this hour. Lewis drove with the windows down, letting the cool night air wash over him. The countryside smelled of rain and earth, so different from the sanitized luxury of Monaco or the exhaust-heavy scent of race days. His thoughts drifted back to childhood drives with his father. Anthony Hamilton behind the wheel of their old car, Lewis in the passenger seat, talking about racing lines and breaking points on the way to karting practice. The memory made him smile. Without really thinking about it, Lewis found himself driving further from the circuit, taking country lanes he'd never explored before. The roads became narrower, the houses more spread out. This was rural England, a side of the country most Formula One drivers never saw when they flew in for the British Grand Prix. He was about 20 miles from Silverstone when the car's dashboard lit up with a warning. The battery level was dropping rapidly, far faster than it should be. "What the—" Lewis tapped at the digital display, but the warning remained. The battery indicator showed just 9% remaining. Something was wrong. The car had been fully charged when he left the hotel. It should have had enough range for hours of driving, not less than an hour. Lewis pulled over to check the vehicle's systems. As he slowed down, he felt the car's handling change, a strange sluggishness that told him this wasn't just a battery issue. He stepped out into the drizzling rain and immediately spotted the problem. A flat tire on the rear right side. A large nail was embedded in the rubber. "Perfect," Lewis muttered. He'd have to call for assistance, but as he reached for his phone, he realized he'd left it charging in his hotel room. The car had a built-in emergency system, but when Lewis tried to activate it, nothing happened. The electrical fault was affecting all the car's systems. Lewis looked around. The narrow country road was deserted. No houses in sight, just fields and hedgerows, barely visible in the darkness. The dashboard clock read 2:38 a.m. On race weekends, Lewis was surrounded by people who solved problems for him: engineers, mechanics, assistants. Now, he was on his own. He smiled at the irony. Lewis Hamilton, who could handle a Formula One car at 200 miles per hour through pouring rain, defeated by a flat tire and a dead battery on a country lane. His options were limited: wait in the car until morning when someone might drive by, or walk until he found help. With a critical race in just a few hours, waiting wasn't really an option. Lewis locked the car and started walking in the direction he'd been driving. Somewhere ahead, there had to be a town, a gas station, something. The rain grew heavier, soaking through his hoodie. Lewis pulled the hood up, head down against the downpour. This was not how he'd planned to spend the night before the British Grand Prix. After about 15 minutes of walking, he spotted a faint glow in the distance. As he got closer, he could make out the illuminated sign of a small gas station. Relief washed over him. He could call for help, maybe even get a ride back to the hotel. The station looked deserted except for a single light inside the small shop. A 24-hour place, thank goodness. Lewis quickened his pace, eager to get out of the rain. The bell above the door jingled as he entered. The small shop was brightly lit, but empty of customers. Shelves of snacks, drinks, and basic supplies lined the walls. At the counter, a man in his mid-30s was reading something on his phone, looking thoroughly bored. He glanced up as Lewis entered, then back down at his phone. "Help you?" he asked without much interest. Lewis realized he must look a mess. Wet hair, soaked hoodie, no wallet, no phone. Not exactly recognizable as a Formula One champion. "My car broke down about a mile back," Lewis explained. "Flat tire and electrical problems. Could I use your phone to call for assistance?" The man looked up again, studying Lewis more carefully this time. "Phones for paying customers only? Shop policy." Lewis patted his pockets, knowing they were empty. "I left my wallet in the car, but I'm good for it, I promise." The attendant raised an eyebrow, clearly skeptical. "That's what they all say." "Look," Lewis said, pushing his wet hood back. "I'm Lewis Hamilton. The Formula One driver? I'm racing at Silverstone tomorrow. Well, today, actually. I just need to make one call." The man behind the counter stared at him for a long moment, then burst out laughing. "Right, and I'm David Beckham, just taking the night shift for fun." Lewis couldn't help but laugh, too. The situation was absurd. "I know how it sounds, but nothing." The attendant cut him off. "Buy something, or the phone stays behind the counter." Lewis was about to argue further when the door jingled again. Another customer entered, shaking rain from an umbrella. "Nasty night," the new arrival commented, heading for the coffee machine in the corner. Lewis turned back to the attendant. "What if he vouches for me? Will you let me use the phone then?" The attendant shrugged. "Depends who he is." Lewis turned to the coffee-seeking customer, who was now filling a large cup with what was probably hours-old brew. "Excuse me," Lewis called out. "Could you help me convince him I'm Lewis Hamilton? My car broke down, and I need to use the phone." The man at the coffee machine turned slowly, cup in hand. He was about Lewis's age, with tired eyes and 3 days' worth of stubble. He wore the Navy uniform of a delivery company. The name Patch, reading Fletcher. For a moment, he just stared at Lewis, coffee forgotten. "Jamie?" Lewis whispered, the name emerging before he could even process why. The delivery driver's eyes widened. The coffee cup slipped from his hand, splashing hot liquid across the linoleum floor. "Lewis," he said hoarsely. "Lewis Hamilton?" And just like that, 25 years melted away. For a long moment, neither man spoke. They just stared at each other, the coffee spreading across the floor between them. "You two know each other?" The gas station attendant looked between them, confused. "Yeah," Jamie finally said, his voice still rough with surprise. "We do." He grabbed some paper towels and knelt to clean up the spilled coffee, his eyes never leaving Louis. Louis stepped forward to help, kneeling beside Jamie, paper towels in hand. Up close, he could see the years mapped on his old friend's face. Smile, lines around the eyes, a small scar above his right eyebrow that hadn't been there before. Shoulders slightly stooped from years of physical work. "I can't believe it's you," Louis said quietly. "Of all the gas stations in England," Jamie's laugh was soft, disbelieving. "What are you even doing here at this hour? Shouldn't you be sleeping before the race?" "Couldn't sleep. Went for a drive. Car broke down." Louis gestured to his wet clothes. "And here I am." The attendant, watching this strange reunion with increasing interest, finally spoke up. "Wait, is he actually Lewis Hamilton? Like, for real?" Jamie nodded, standing up with a handful of wet paper towels. "We grew up together in Stevenage. He's the real deal." The attendant's eyes widened comically. "Bloody hell! I just told Lewis Hamilton he couldn't use the phone." He turned to Louis. "Sorry, mate. Use whatever you need. Phone's right here." Louis smiled. "Thanks. But first," he turned back to Jamie. "It's been a long time." 25 years, Jamie said, give or take. The gas station attendant, now thoroughly invested in their reunion, grabbed his jacket from behind the counter. "Look, I'm going for a smoke. Take your time. Phone's all yours when you need it." As the door jingled closed behind him, Louis and Jamie were left alone in the fluorescent-lit shop, surrounded by shelves of snacks and motor oil. "So," Louis said, suddenly unsure what to say to this ghost from his past. "Delivery driver?" Jamie nodded, gesturing to his uniform. "Night shifts, mostly. Been doing it about 10 years now." "You always were a night owl," Louis remembered. "Even as a kid. Your mom used to complain you never went to bed on time." "You remember that?" Louis nodded. "I remember a lot." Jamie smiled, the same smile from childhood, though his front teeth were no longer slightly crooked. "I remember a lot, too. Like how you used to get so focused before races that you wouldn't talk to anyone, just stared at the track, planning your moves." "I still do that. I know." Jamie's eyes crinkled. "I've watched every race." Louis felt something tighten in his chest. "Every race. Every single one. From your first Formula 3 race to Monaco 2 weeks ago." Louis didn't know what to say. The idea that Jamie had followed his career, watched him rise through the ranks to Formula 1, celebrated his championships from afar. It was overwhelming. "Why didn't you ever reach out?" Louis finally asked. Jamie shrugged, looking down at his worn work boots. "What would I have said? Hey, remember me, your childhood mate? The one who hasn't done anything special with his life?" "Don't say that. It's true though, isn't it?" Jamie's voice held no bitterness, just a simple acceptance. "Look at you, 7-time world champion, Sir Lewis Hamilton, millionaire, and look at me." He gestured to his uniform. "Delivering packages in the middle of the night." Louis shook his head firmly. "That's not how I see it." "No? How do you see it then?" "I see the boy who stood up for me when no one else would, who made me believe I belonged in racing even when everyone said I didn't." Jamie's eyes softened. "You'd have made it without me. Maybe. Maybe not. But I've never forgotten what you did for me." Louis hesitated, then added, "I still have the model McLaren you gave me. The Häkkinen one." Jamie's eyes widened. You kept that? After all these years? Louis nodded. It goes everywhere with me. It's in my hotel room right now. Jamie turned away, but not before Louis caught the shine of tears in his eyes. I'm sorry, Louis said quietly, for losing touch, for not trying harder to stay connected. Jamie wiped at his eyes quickly, then turned back with a forced smile. Don't be stupid. You were busy becoming Lewis Hamilton. I get it. Still, friends don't just forget friends. Life happens. Jamie leaned against the counter. We were kids. Kids grow up, move on. Louis studied his old friend's face, seeing the boy he'd known beneath the man he'd become. So, what happened after Manchester? Last I heard, your dad had that new job. Jamie's expression darkened slightly. Didn't last. Company went bust after 2 years. Dad struggled after that. Mom had to take extra shifts at the hospital. He shrugged. The usual story. And you? After school. Started university. Engineering. Jamie's smile was self-deprecating. Turns out I was good with engines, just like we used to talk about. But Dad got sick my second year. Cancer. Had to drop out to help Mom. Louis felt a pang of guilt. While he'd been rising through the racing ranks, focused entirely on his career, Jamie had been dealing with real-life struggles. I'm sorry about your dad. He pulled through. 5 years, cancer-free now. Jamie's smile became more genuine. Stubborn old man. Like father, like son, Louis said, remembering how determined Jamie had always been. Jamie laughed, a real laugh. This time. Maybe so. The door jingled as the attendant returned, stamping his feet on the mat. All sorted, lads? Need that phone now? Louis looked at his watch. 3:30 a.m. Yeah, I should call my team. They'll be wondering where I am. As Louis dialed his assistant's number, Jamie moved to leave. I should get going. Still have deliveries to make. Good luck in the race today. Wait, Louis said, covering the phone. Don't go yet. I need a ride back to the hotel anyway. Can you wait 5 minutes? Jamie hesitated, then nodded. Sure, I'll be outside. Louis quickly explained his situation to his very worried assistant, arranged for someone to recover his car, and promised to be back at the hotel within the hour. Outside, Jamie was leaning against his delivery van, arms crossed against the light. Rain that was still falling. All set? Jamie asked. Louis nodded. My team's sending someone for the car, but I need a ride back to the hotel. Jamie gestured to the van. Your chariot awaits. Not quite a Mercedes Formula One car, but it moves. Better company, though, Louis said, climbing into the passenger seat. As Jamie started the engine, Louis noticed the van's dashboard. Among the usual work papers and delivery notices was a small photo tucked into the visor, a picture of Jamie with an older couple and a young girl about 10 years old. Your family? Louis asked. Jamie glanced at the photo and smiled. Yeah, Mom and Dad, and my daughter, Lily. You have a daughter? Louis was surprised, though he shouldn't have been. Of course Jamie had built a life in the years they'd been apart. Yep, 10 years old and already knows she wants to be a race car driver. Jamie's eyes twinkled. Wonder where she got that from. Like father, like daughter, Louis said. More like godfather, like goddaughter. Godfather? Jamie nodded as he pulled the van onto the main road. You? Well, not officially. But she's grown up hearing all my stories about the great Lewis Hamilton, who I used to race karts with. She thinks you walk on water. Louis felt a strange mixture of pride and sadness. A little girl he'd never met thought of him as a hero because of stories Jamie had told. Stories from a friendship he'd let slip away. I'd like to meet her someday, Lewis said quietly. Really? Jamie glanced at him skeptically. You'd make time for that? The question stung, partly because Lewis knew it was fair. His life was carefully scheduled, each hour accounted for. Meetings, training, appearances, races. I would, Lewis said firmly. For you and Lily, I would. Jamie was silent for a moment, focusing on the dark road ahead. She'd love that. But I don't want her to get her hopes up, you know? Today's just a weird coincidence. Tomorrow you go back to your world, and I go back to mine. Lewis started to protest, but Jamie continued. It's okay, Lewis. Really. I don't have any expectations here. I know how busy you are, how important. Not too important for old friends. Jamie gave him a sidelong glance. We'll see. As they drove through the night, Lewis realized how much he'd missed Jamie's straightforward honesty. Everyone in his current life was so careful around him, careful of his time, his image, his feelings. Jamie still spoke to him like he was just Lewis, not Sir Lewis Hamilton, the Formula One champion. No wife in that family photo? Lewis asked after a while. Jamie shook his head. Divorced 6 years ago. Lily lives with me half the time. He smiled, slightly. Single dad. Another thing we have in common, being raised by determined fathers. Lewis nodded, thinking of his own dad. Our fathers made us who we are. True enough. As they approached the lights of Silverstone and the surrounding hotels, Lewis felt a strange reluctance. He wasn't ready for this unexpected reunion to end. You could come to the race today, he said suddenly. You and Lily. I can arrange paddock passes. Jamie's hands tightened on the steering wheel. Lily's with her mum this weekend. Just you then. I have work, Lewis. Not all of us can take Sundays off. There was an edge to Jamie's voice now, a reminder of the gulf between their lives. Lewis had been thoughtless, assuming Jamie could rearrange his schedule on a whim. Sorry, Lewis said quietly. I didn't think. Jamie's expression softened. No, I'm sorry. That came out wrong. He sighed. Truth is, I'd love to come. But I'm needed here. They pulled up to Lewis's hotel, the grand entrance illuminated despite the early hour. A member of Lewis's team was already waiting outside, looking anxious. Looks like your real life is calling, Jamie said. Lewis turned to face his childhood friend. This was real too. Finding you again. Jamie nodded, something unreadable in his eyes. It was good to see you, Lewis. Truly. Before Lewis could respond, Jamie reached into the glove compartment and pulled out a small notepad and pen. He scribbled something quickly and handed it to Lewis. My number, in case you ever want to grab a coffee when you're in the area. His smile was genuine but guarded. No pressure, I know how it is. Lewis took the paper, folding it carefully and tucking it into his pocket. I'll call you, I promise. Famous last words, Jamie said, but his tone was light. Now, go get some sleep. You've got a race to win. As Lewis climbed out of the van, he felt torn. Part of him wanted to stay, to keep talking with Jamie, to bridge the 25-year gap between them. But his team member was already approaching, concern written across his face. Good night, Jamie, Lewis said. Or, good morning, I guess. Good luck today, champ, Jamie replied. I'll be watching. As the delivery van pulled away, Lewis watched until its taillights disappeared into the pre-dawn darkness. In his pocket, Jamie's number felt like it weighed a ton, a small piece of paper connecting him to a past he'd almost forgotten. Everything. All right, Sir Lewis? His team member asked. Lewis nodded, turning toward the hotel. Everything's fine. Just ran into an old friend. Lewis barely slept when he got back to his hotel room. His mind kept replaying the chance meeting with Jamie, comparing the boy he'd known with the man he'd become. By the time his alarm went off at 7 a.m., Lewis had gotten less than 3 hours of sleep. But strangely, he didn't feel tired. Adrenaline and emotion kept him wide awake as he went through his race day routine. Breakfast, stretching, team briefing. The entire time, the small piece of paper with Jamie's number burned in his pocket. "You're distracted," Lewis's performance coach noted during their pre-race preparation. "Something on your mind?" Lewis considered telling him about Jamie, but decided against it. Some things were too personal, too precious to share. "Just focused on the race," Lewis said. But he wasn't. Not entirely. As race time approached, Lewis tried to force Jamie from his thoughts. He needed his full concentration. 63 laps of Silverstone demanded nothing less. Yet as he sat in the car on the starting grid, heat rising from the tarmac, engines revving around him, Lewis found himself scanning the grandstands. Somewhere out there, Jamie would be watching. Not in person, but on a television. Maybe in his living room. Maybe during a break from his delivery route. "Focus," Lewis whispered to himself as the formation lap began. "Focus!" When the lights went out and the race started, instinct took over. Lewis made a clean getaway, defending his lead into the first corner. For the next hour and a half, he was fully present, fully engaged in the battle. This was where Lewis. Hamilton became his truest self at 200 miles per hour, making split-second decisions. After 50 laps of intense racing, Lewis had built a comfortable lead. The British crowd roared each time he passed the main grandstand, Union Jack flags waving in the summer breeze. 10 laps to go, Lewis, his race engineer informed him. "Everything looking good," Lewis acknowledged with a quick button press on his steering wheel. As he raced through Copse Corner, muscle memory guiding the car through the apex, his thoughts drifted to Jamie once more. Would his old friend be proud of the driver he'd become? The man he'd become? On the final lap, with victory secured barring disaster, Lewis allowed himself a moment of reflection. So much of his journey had begun with a boy who believed in him, a boy who'd stood between him and Bullies, a boy who'd given him a model McLaren and made him promise not to forget where he came from. "I never forgot, Jamie," Lewis whispered inside, his helmet as he crossed the finish line to win his 8th British Grand Prix. The podium celebration passed in a blur of champagne and national anthem. Throughout the post-race interviews, Lewis gave his usual thoughtful answers about strategy and teamwork. But as soon as his media duties were complete, he retreated to his private room in the Mercedes hospitality unit. There, he took out his phone and the crumpled paper with Jamie's number. He hesitated only a moment before dialing. "Hello?" Jamie's voice sounded different over the phone, more guarded. "It's Lewis." A pause, then a surprised laugh. "You actually called." "I promised I would." "Yeah, but..." Jamie trailed off. "Never mind. Congratulations on the win. That pass into Stowe was incredible." "You watched?" "Told you. Every race." Lewis smiled, settling into a chair away from the celebration noise. "Listen, I'm still at the track. Media stuff, team debrief. But I was wondering if you're free later. Maybe we could grab dinner?" Another pause. "Tonight? I've got Lily. She's coming. Back from her mum's at 6? Bring her," Lewis said without hesitation. "I'd love to meet her." "Are you serious?" "Completely. Lewis Hamilton wants to have dinner with a delivery driver and his kid." Jamie's tone was disbelieving. "Won't that mess with your image or something?" "My image could use a reality check." "Sometimes," Jamie laughed. "All right then. but nowhere fancy. Lily will be in jeans and a t-shirt, and so will I. There's a small Italian place in Tocester, family-owned, does the best pasta outside of Italy. I'll text you the address. Can't. Wait to see Lily's face when she realizes who she's having dinner with. You haven't told her? And have her think her dad's gone mad? No chance. This'll be a surprise. After they hung up, Louis felt lighter than he had in years. Winning races was one thing. Reconnecting with his past, with the people who'd shaped him, was something else entirely. The Italian restaurant was small and unassuming, tucked away on a side street. Louis had called ahead to reserve a private room in the back, away from curious eyes. He arrived early, wearing jeans and a simple black sweater. No designer labels, no team gear. When Jamie arrived with Lily, Louis watched through the window as they approached. Jamie looked nervous, continually smoothing his daughter's hair while she batted his hand away with the exasperated look that only pre-teens can perfect. The restaurant owner, who had known Louis for years, escorted them to the private room. Lily entered first, then stopped abruptly, causing Jamie to bump into her. "Dad," she whispered loudly, "that's Lewis Hamilton." Jamie pretended surprise. "Is it? Fancy that." Louis stood, smiling at Lily's wide-eyed stare. "Hi, Lily. Your dad's told me a lot about you." "My dad knows Lewis Hamilton?" Lily turned to Jamie, her expression a mixture of shock and suspicion. "Since when?" "Since we were about your age," Jamie said, gently nudging her forward. "We grew up together." Lily looked between the two men, clearly trying to process this information. "But you never said—" "It was a long time ago," Jamie explained. "We lost touch. Until last night," Louis added, "when your dad rescued me from a gas station in the middle of nowhere." Lily's eyes grew even wider. "Is that where you were last night? You said it was just a normal delivery run?" "It was," Jamie laughed, "until it wasn't." As they settled around the table, Lily's initial shock gave way to 1,000 questions. She wanted to know everything: how fast Formula One cars really went, what it felt like to win a championship, whether Louis knew her favorite pop stars. Louis answered patiently, charmed by her curiosity and directness. She had Jamie's eyes and his way of asking questions that cut straight to the heart of things. "So you and my dad were best friends?" Lily asked as they waited for their food. Louis glanced at Jamie. "Yeah, we were." "What was he like when he was a kid? Was he boring back then too?" "Lily!" Jamie protested. Louis laughed. "Your dad was the coolest kid I knew. He stood up to bullies, knew everything about racing, and wasn't afraid of anything." "Bullies?" Lily looked at her father with new interest. Jamie shifted uncomfortably. "It was nothing." "It wasn't nothing to me," Louis said quietly. He turned to Lily. "When we were in school, some kids used to pick on me because I looked different. I'm mixed race. My dad is black, my mom is white. Back then, in our school, that made me a target." Lily frowned. "That's stupid." "It was," Louis agreed. "But kids can be cruel sometimes. Your dad was the only one who stood up for me." Jamie stared at his water glass. "Anyone would have done the same." "But they didn't," Louis insisted. "You did." Lily watched this exchange with keen interest. "Did you ever stand up to bullies for my dad?" she asked Louis. The question caught Louis off guard. He searched his memory, but couldn't recall a single instance where he defended Jamie the way Jamie had defended him. "I don't think I did," Louis admitted, a realization that suddenly felt heavy. "That's because no one messed with Louis once they saw what he could do on the track," Jamie said quickly. He was a racing star even back then. Their food arrived, temporarily pausing the conversation. As they ate, the discussion moved to lighter topics. Lily's school, her interest in science and math, her own budding passion for motorsports. "Dad takes me to the kart track sometimes," she told Louis proudly. "I'm getting pretty good." "She's a natural," Jamie confirmed. "Better than I ever was." "Maybe I could come watch sometime," Louis suggested. Lily nearly choked on her pasta. "Really? You'd do that?" "If your dad doesn't mind," Jamie smiled. "I think we could arrange that." As the evening progressed, Louis found himself relaxing in a way he rarely did in public. There were no cameras here, no sponsors to please, no image to maintain. Just an old friend and his daughter, sharing stories and laughter. When the dessert menus arrived, Lily excused herself to visit the restroom, leaving the two men alone. "She's amazing," Louis said. "You've done a great job with her." "Thanks," Jamie replied. "She's the best thing in my life." A comfortable silence settled between them before Louis spoke again. "I've been thinking about what she asked, about whether I ever stood up for you." "I don't think I did, Jamie. I was so focused on racing, on getting ahead." Jamie shook his head. "Don't. We were kids. Kids should stand by their friends." "You did." "Louis, there's something I need to know," Louis interrupted. "Something I've been wondering all day. All those times you defended me from bullies. What happened after I left? After McLaren took me on?" Jamie's expression changed, something guarded slipping into place. "What do you mean? Did the bullies turn on you? For being my friend?" Jamie was quiet for a long moment, then sighed. "It doesn't matter now." But Louis could see the answer in his eyes. "They did, didn't they? They targeted you after I was gone." "Kids can be cruel," Jamie echoed Louis's earlier words. It was a long time ago. Louis felt a knot form in his stomach. All these years, he'd never considered what might have happened to Jamie after he left, how his friend might have suffered for their association. "Why didn't you tell me? In your letters?" "What good would it have done?" Jamie asked. "You were living your dream. The last thing you needed was to worry about me." He smiled slightly. "Besides, I had a reputation to maintain. Jamie Fletcher, fearless defender of the weak." Before Louis could respond, Lily returned, full of opinions about which dessert to order. The moment for deeper conversation had passed. But as they shared tiramisu and ice cream, Louis watched Jamie with his daughter. Patient, kind, fully present in a way that Louis's own father, for all his dedication, hadn't always been able to be. Jamie had built a life of quiet dignity, raising a remarkable daughter while working night shifts to provide for her. And suddenly, Louis wasn't sure whose life was truly more successful. When the evening ended, Louis insisted on paying, waving away Jamie's protests. Outside the restaurant, Lily asked for a selfie, which Louis happily provided. "This is going to make me the most popular kid in school," she declared, studying the photo with satisfaction. "Just remember," Jamie told her, "famous friends don't make you important. It's how you treat people that matters." Lily rolled her eyes. "Yes, Dad. You've only told me that 1,000,000 times." Louis smiled at their exchange. "Your dad's a wise man. Took me years to learn what he already knew when we were kids." As they prepared to part ways, Louis felt a strange reluctance. He didn't want this reconnection to end. Didn't want to risk losing Jamie again. "I'm flying back to Monaco tomorrow," Louis said. "But I'll be back for simulator work next week. Maybe we could meet up again, all three of us?" Jamie hesitated, glancing at Lily's hopeful face. "We'll see," You've got a busy schedule. I'll make time, Louis insisted. This matters. As Jamie and Lily drove away, Louis watched until their car disappeared around a corner. The evening had stirred up memories and emotions he'd kept buried for years, and questions, so many questions, about the friend he'd left behind. On the drive back to his hotel, Louis made a decision. He wasn't going to let Jamie Fletcher slip out of his life again. Not when fate had given them a second chance. True to his word, Louis called Jamie the following week when he returned to England for simulator work at the Mercedes factory in Brackley. They met for coffee, just the two of them this time, in a quiet corner of a local cafe. "I've been thinking," Louis said, after they'd caught up on the events of the past few days. "The Hungarian Grand Prix is in 3 weeks. I want you and Lily to come as my guests." Jamie nearly spilled his coffee. "To Hungary? Louis, we can't just drop everything and fly to Budapest." "Why not? It's during summer holidays. Lily wouldn't miss school. There's work, for one thing, and money. International trips aren't exactly in my budget right now." Louis leaned forward. "I'd take care of everything. Flights, hotel, tickets, all of it." Jamie's expression closed off. "I don't need charity." "Louis, it's not charity," Louis insisted. "It's me wanting to share my world with an old friend and his daughter. The friend who helped make it all possible." Jamie laughed. "I hardly think I'm responsible for your 7 world championships." "You are, though. In ways you don't even realize." Louis paused, choosing his words carefully. "That confidence you gave me when we were kids? The belief that I belonged in racing despite what the bullies said? That stayed with me, Jamie. Through Formula 3, through GP2, all the way to Formula 1. Jamie looked uncomfortable with the praise. "You're giving me too much credit." "I'm not giving you enough," Louis countered. "Please, just think about it. For Lily, if not for yourself, she'd love it." In the end, Jamie agreed to consider it. That was enough for Louis, who recognized the stubborn pride that had always been part of his friend's character. 3 days later, Jamie called with his answer, yes. Lily's excitement had worn down his resistance, but he had conditions. They would accept only the tickets and paddock passes. Louis couldn't pay for their flights or hotel. Louis agreed, hiding his smile. Jamie Fletcher hadn't changed that much after all. When the Hungarian Grand Prix weekend arrived, Louis arranged for Jamie and Lily to have special access to the Mercedes garage. Their passes would allow them into areas most fans never saw. The heart of Formula 1, Louis was in the team meeting when they arrived at the Hungaroring circuit. His assistant texted to let him know his guests were being given a tour of the paddock until he was free. 45 minutes later, Louis found them staring in awe at the massive Mercedes hospitality structure. "This is where you eat lunch?" Lily asked, eyes wide as they entered the 3-story building that served as the team's home during race weekends. Louis nodded. "And have meetings, and sometimes nap between sessions. It's bigger than our whole house," she whispered to her father. Jamie looked slightly overwhelmed by the luxury surrounding them. The sleek furniture, the uniformed staff, the wall of screens showing timing data and weather forecasts. "Different world," he murmured to Louis. "Same people," Louis replied quietly. "Just with fancier clothes and more pressure." Louis introduced Jamie and Lily to everyone they met. Engineers, mechanics, catering staff, team executives. To each one, he said the same thing. "This is Jamie Fletcher, my oldest friend, the one who made it all possible." At first, Jamie looked embarrassed by this introduction, but as the day went on, Louis noticed his friend standing taller, speaking more confidently. The garage tour seemed to particularly interest him. his eyes darting expertly over the complex machinery of the Mercedes Formula One car. "You still know your way around an engine," Lewis observed, as Jamie asked the chief mechanic a detailed question about the power unit. Jamie shrugged. "Some things you don't forget." The highlight came when Lewis introduced them to his team principal, who greeted Jamie with genuine respect after hearing Lewis's story about their childhood friendship. "So you're the one who kept the bullies away," the team boss said, shaking Jamie's hand. "Lewis mentioned you in his autobiography, you know." Jamie's head turned sharply toward Lewis. "You wrote about me in your book?" Lewis nodded. "Just a paragraph, or two. About a friend who believed in me when others didn't." "I never read it," Jamie admitted. "Felt too strange, reading about someone I used to know." "I'll sign a copy for you before you leave," Lewis promised. "Though most of it will probably bore you. Racing stories you've already watched." As qualifying approached, Lewis needed to change into his racing suit and begin his pre-session routine. He hesitated, not wanting to abandon Jamie and Lily. "We'll be fine," Jamie assured him, sensing his concern. "I remember how you need to focus before driving." "You can watch from the garage," Lewis told them. "The mechanics will explain everything." Lily bounced with excitement. "From the actual garage? Where the cars are. Best seats in the house," Lewis confirmed. "Just don't touch any buttons." "I won't," Lily promised solemnly. "Dad would kill me." "So would the engineers," Lewis teased. "Some of those buttons cost more than a house." As Lewis walked toward the driver's room, Jamie called after him. "Hey, Lewis," Lewis turned back. "Drive like you did at Rye House," Jamie said. "Like you've got nothing to lose." Lewis nodded, a lump suddenly forming in his throat. 25 years melted away, and he was that karting kid again, with his best friend watching from the sidelines. Always. 5 qualifying session went perfectly. Lewis secured pole position with a lap that the commentators described as simply magical. When he returned to the garage, Lily was jumping up and down with excitement, while Jamie stood back, a quiet pride in his eyes. That evening, they joined Lewis for dinner at his hotel. The conversation flowed easily, jumping between memories of the past and observations about the present. "You were amazing today," Lily told Lewis for the 5th time. "When you went through that corner, what's it called?" "Turn 11, Lewis supplied. "Yes, turn 11. Dad said no human should be able to take a corner that fast." Jamie laughed. "I might have exaggerated a bit." "You didn't," Lewis said. "That's the magic of Formula One. We do things that shouldn't be possible." After dinner, as they waited for the elevator, Lily suddenly turned to Lewis. "Can I ask you something? Something important?" "Of course." "Dad said you two lost touch because you got famous and busy. But you're still famous and busy, and now you're friends again. So why did you really stop being friends before?" Jamie looked mortified. "Lily, that's not appropriate." "It's okay," Lewis said, though the question had caught him off guard. "It's a fair question." He knelt to Lily's eye level, aware of Jamie watching uncomfortably. "The truth is, I got so focused on becoming a racing driver that I forgot what matters most in life. Friends, family, the people who believe in you. That was my mistake, not your dad's." Lily considered this, then nodded. "That makes sense. Dad says people who chase their dreams sometimes forget to look around at what they already have." Lewis glanced up at Jamie, who looked away quickly. "Your dad is very wise." The next day, race day, brought a new level of excitement. Lewis arranged for Jamie and Lily to stand with him on the grid before the start, a privilege usually reserved for celebrities and team VIPs. The heat was intense, the atmosphere electric. Lily stared in wonder at the 20 Formula One cars lined up on the track, their engines occasionally revving. "This is so cool," she whispered to her father. Jamie nodded, looking slightly overwhelmed. "It's something else, isn't it?" Lewis was in his element, moving between engineers, tire specialists, and his performance coach. But he made sure to include Jamie and Lily, explaining procedures and introducing them to other drivers. When the call came for non-team personnel to leave the grid, Lewis felt a moment of anxiety. He wasn't ready to say goodbye. "We'll be watching from the garage," Jamie assured him. "Just like we planned." "I know," Lewis said. "It's just having you here. It feels right somehow." Jamie smiled. "Feels right to me, too." As Jamie turned to go, Lewis stopped him. "Wait, there's something I need to say before the race." Jamie raised an eyebrow. "You're the friend who made it all possible," Lewis said, loud enough for nearby team members to hear. "Not just when we were kids. Today, too." Jamie's eyes widened slightly. "How do you figure that?" "Because when I'm racing, I'm still that kid from Stevenage, trying to prove I belong. And you were the first person who ever made me believe that I did." For a moment, Jamie seemed unable to speak. Then he pulled Lewis into a quick hug. "Go win this one," Jamie said gruffly. "Lily wants to see a podium celebration up close." Lewis grinned. "Yes, sir." The race was one of the hardest of Lewis's career. A poor start dropped him to 4th place by the first corner. Rain began falling on lap 20, making the track treacherous. By mid-race, he'd fought back to 2nd place, but the leader seemed uncatchable. In the Mercedes garage, Jamie and Lily watched tensely as Lewis pushed his car to the limit, lap after lap. The mechanics around them called out encouragement, their usual professional detachment forgotten in the drama of the moment. "He catch him?" Lily asked one of the engineers. "If anyone can, Lewis can," was the confident reply. With 10 laps remaining, Lewis began setting purple sectors, the fastest times of anyone on track. The gap to the leader shrank with each passing lap. "He's driving like I've never seen," Jamie whispered to Lily. "Like he's got something to prove." When Lewis finally made his move, 3 laps from the end, the entire garage erupted in cheers. A perfectly timed overtake around the outside of Turn 4, a corner where passing was considered nearly impossible. "That's Dad's friend," Lily told a startled journalist who had wandered into the garage. "He's winning because we're here." From the timing screens, they watched Lewis cross the finish line in 1st place, a narrow but decisive victory. The Mercedes side of the garage exploded in celebration. Team members hugged each other, high-fived, shouted in triumph. In the midst of it all, Jamie stood quietly, a smile on his face and tears in his eyes. "Your dad's crying," Lily observed. "No, I'm not," Jamie said quickly, wiping at his face. "Just sweat. It's hot in here." "Sure, Dad," Lily said, rolling her eyes, but she slipped her hand into his and squeezed, a gesture that didn't go unnoticed by the Mercedes team members around them. After the podium ceremony, where Lewis dedicated his victory to "old friends who still believe in me," he returned to find Jamie and Lily waiting in the team's celebration area. Without hesitation, Lewis handed his trophy to Lily. "Hold this for a minute?" Her eyes widened as she took the heavy trophy in both hands. "Really?" "Really." Lewis turned to Jamie. "I want to offer you something, and I need you to hear me out before you say no." Jamie looked wary. "What is it?" "A job. With my foundation. The Hamilton Commission needs someone to run its new mentorship program, connecting kids from underrepresented backgrounds with opportunities in motorsport. Jamie blinked in surprise. "Lewis, before you call it charity," Lewis interrupted, "know that it's not. I need someone who understands what it's like to face barriers. Someone who can spot talent and courage in places others don't look. Someone kids will respect and listen to." "I'm not qualified," Jamie protested. "I don't have a degree. I drive a delivery van. You have life experience. You understand people." Lewis placed a hand on his friend's shoulder. "More importantly, you understand me, where I came from, what my foundation is trying to do." Jamie looked uncertain. "I'd have to move, find a new place. Lily would have to change schools. We'd help with all of that. The position comes with relocation assistance." Lewis could see Jamie thinking it through, weighing the opportunity against his pride, his routines, his independence. "Think about it," Lewis said. "That's all I'm asking. Talk it over with Lily." Lily, who had been pretending not to listen while admiring the trophy, looked up. "I vote yes. Dad would be amazing at helping kids." Jamie laughed. "Thank you for your input, but this is a big decision." "The biggest decisions often are the easiest ones," Lewis said quietly, "when they're the right ones." As the celebration continued around them, Lewis watched Jamie's face, seeing the conflict there. He knew his friend well enough to understand his hesitation. Jamie Fletcher had spent a lifetime standing on his own 2 feet, asking for nothing, expecting nothing. But Lewis also knew something Jamie didn't yet understand: that accepting help from a friend wasn't weakness. Sometimes it was the bravest thing a person could do. "Whatever you decide," Lewis told him, "our friendship doesn't depend on it. That's back for good now." Jamie nodded, something resolving in his eyes. "Let me sleep on it. But I'm not saying no." For Lewis, that was enough, more than enough. Because somewhere between the lonely night at the gas station and this moment of victory, Lewis Hamilton had rediscovered something more valuable than any trophy: the power of a friendship that had shaped him, sustained him, and now returned to him when he needed it most. 6 months passed in a whirlwind of change. Jamie accepted the position with the Hamilton Commission after 2 weeks of careful consideration. Lewis helped him find a comfortable flat near the Foundation's headquarters in London, not far from a good school for Lily. The racing season continued, with Lewis securing his 8th World Championship in a dramatic final race in Abu Dhabi. Jamie and Lily watched from the Mercedes garage, honorary team members by that point. When winter came, bringing the off-season, Lewis found himself spending more time in England than usual. Weekend dinners with Jamie and Lily became a regular event. Sometimes they ate at fancy restaurants, but more often they gathered at Jamie's flat, cooking together and playing board games that inevitably ended with Lily declaring herself the champion. "She cheats," Jamie would whisper to Lewis. "I just can't figure out how." Lewis would laugh, enjoying the simple pleasure of friendship without cameras or expectations. On a cold January evening, Lewis arrived at Jamie's flat with a small wrapped package under his arm. Lily answered the door, immediately eyeing the gift. "Is that for me?" she asked hopefully. "Lily," Jamie called from the kitchen. "Don't be rude," Lewis smiled. "Actually, it's for your dad this time." Jamie appeared in the hallway, wiping his hands on a kitchen towel. "For me? What's the occasion?" "Just something I've been meaning to give you," Lewis said, suddenly feeling nervous. "Can we talk for a minute? Just us?" Jamie nodded, curious. "Lily, can you watch the sauce? Stir it every couple of minutes like I showed you." "I know how to stir sauce, Dad," Lily replied with an eye roll, but she dutifully headed to the kitchen. Into onto the living room, Louis handed Jamie the package. "This might seem strange," he warned, "but it's important to me." Jamie unwrapped it carefully, revealing a small wooden box. Inside was the model McLaren, Mika Häkkinen's car that Jamie had given Louis 25 years ago when they'd said goodbye in Stevenage. "You're giving it back?" Jamie asked, confused. Louis shook his head. "No, I mean yes, technically, but not because I don't want it." He took a deep breath. "That model has gone everywhere with me, Jamie. Every race, every country, every home I've ever had. It reminded me where I came from, who believed in me first." Jamie stared at the model car, running his finger gently over its tiny details. "I saved up for 2 months to buy this," he said quietly. "Did odd jobs around the neighborhood?" "I know. Your mom told my dad." Jamie looked up, surprised. "She did?" Louis nodded. "That's why it meant so much to me. Still means so much." "Then, why give it back?" "Because I don't need a reminder anymore." Louis gestured around them. "I have the real thing now, our friendship, back where it belongs." Jamie's eyes glistened slightly in the dim light. "It's probably worth something now, being owned by Lewis Hamilton and all." "Probably," Louis agreed with a smile, "but its real value has nothing to do with me." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment before Jamie spoke again. "The foundation work is amazing, Louis. Better than I imagined. These kids, they remind me of us, especially you. So much talent, so much determination, just needing someone to say, 'You belong here.'" Louis felt a warmth spread through his chest. "That's exactly what I hoped you'd bring to it. That understanding." "We're making a difference," Jamie said. "Real difference. Yesterday, I placed 3 students in apprenticeships with racing teams. One of them, a girl from Brixton, has never seen a race in person, but she can take apart and rebuild an engine faster than most professionals. Future chief mechanic," Louis suggested. "Or engineer, or team principal. She's that smart." This was what Louis had envisioned when he'd created the Hamilton Commission, opening doors that had remained stubbornly closed to people who looked like him, came from backgrounds like his. Having Jamie lead the mentorship program had been the missing piece. "I have something else for you," Louis said, reaching into his pocket. "A letter from my dad." Jamie took the faded envelope with surprise. "From Anthony? Why would he write to me?" "He didn't. Not recently, anyway." Louis watched as Jamie examined the yellowed paper. "That letter is 24 years old. He found it when he was moving house last month." Jamie turned the envelope over. His own childish handwriting was faded, but legible. "For Lewis Hamilton." "I don't understand," Jamie said. "This is from me to you?" Louis nodded. "A letter you wrote after I left for McLaren. Dad says it was delivered to our old house in Stevenage after we'd moved. The new owners forwarded it, but somehow it got mixed up with my dad's papers. He never gave it to me." Jamie stared at the envelope, recognition dawning in his eyes. "I remember writing this. I was so afraid you'd forget all about me once you were with McLaren." "I did forget," Louis admitted quietly. "Not completely, but enough. I got caught up in my new life, my new world. I'm sorry for that." "We were kids," Jamie said, echoing his words from their first reunion. "Kids grow up. Move on." "Open it," Louis urged. "I haven't read it. Dad gave it to me sealed." Jamie hesitated, then carefully opened the envelope, taking care not to tear. The brittle paper. He unfolded a single sheet, covered in the messy handwriting of an 11-year-old boy. As Jamie read, his expression changed. Louis watched emotions play across his friend's face. Surprise, pain, and finally a kind of quiet acceptance. "What does it say?" Lewis asked when Jamie remained silent. Jamie cleared his throat. "Just kid stuff. Asking how McLaren was, telling you about Manchester." But something in Jamie's voice told Lewis there was more to it than that. "Jamie," Lewis said gently, "please tell me what it really says." Jamie sighed, then began to read aloud. "Dear Lewis, I hope McLaren is amazing. I bet you're the fastest one there already. Manchester is okay. The new school is bigger than our old one. The kids here are different than in Stevenage." Jamie paused, seemingly reluctant to continue. "Go on," Lewis encouraged. "Some boys found out I was friends with you. They said I was lying. When I showed them the picture of us at Rye House, they said you'd never make it to Formula One, that you weren't good enough, that someone like you doesn't belong in racing." Lewis felt his stomach tighten. "I got in a fight with them," Jamie continued, reading. "Got suspended for 3 days. Mum was really mad. Dad wasn't, though. He said sometimes you have to stand up for what you believe in. And I believe in you, Lewis. I know you're going to be a champion someday. When you are, all those stupid boys will see I was right." Jamie's voice grew quieter. "I miss racing with you. I miss having someone who doesn't think I'm weird for knowing all about engines and downforce. Most of all, I miss having a best friend. I hope you still think of me sometimes. Your friend always, Jamie." When Jamie finished reading, Lewis found himself unable to speak. All these years, he'd carried guilt for forgetting Jamie, for moving on without looking back. But Jamie had continued to defend him, continued to believe in him, even when Lewis wasn't there to see it. "You never told me," Lewis finally managed, "about the bullies targeting you for being my friend." Jamie folded the letter carefully. "What would have been the point? You had enough pressure trying to succeed at McLaren. But you got suspended. You fought for me when I wasn't even there." Jamie shrugged. "They were wrong about you. I knew it. I couldn't let them say those things." Lewis thought about all the times in his career when people had doubted him, dismissed him, tried to put him in his place. How it had fueled him to prove them wrong. And all the while, a boy in Manchester had been fighting the same battles on his behalf, without recognition or thanks. "I wish I'd known," Lewis said softly. "I wish I'd been a better friend." "You're making up for it now," Jamie said with a smile. "The job, the new start for me and Lily. It's more than enough." "It's not about making up for anything," Lewis insisted. "It's about recognizing your worth, what you bring to the table. The foundation is better because you're part of it." From the kitchen, Lily called out that dinner was ready. Jamie stood, tucking the letter into his pocket. "Should we continue this conversation later?" he asked. But Lewis wasn't ready to let the moment pass. He reached into his other pocket and pulled out a second envelope. "One more thing," he said, holding it out to Jamie. "This is more official." Jamie took it warily. "What now? Another blast? From the past?" "The future, actually." Jamie opened the envelope and pulled out a formal document. His eyes widened as he read. "Lewis, this is an ownership stake in the foundation," Lewis confirmed. 5%, with options for more as the organization grows. Jamie shook his head in disbelief. "I can't accept this. It's too much." "It's not a gift," Lewis said firmly. "It's recognition of your value to the organization, of your insight and experience. The lawyers drew it up last week. It's already done." "But—" "No buts," Lewis interrupted. "You're not just an employee, Jamie. You're a partner. You always have been, in more ways than I realized." Jamie stared at the document, seemingly at a loss for words. Dad! Louis, the pasta's getting cold, Lily called impatiently from the kitchen. Coming, Jamie called back. He carefully folded the document and returned it to the envelope. We'll talk about this later. There's nothing to talk about, Louis said, except how we're going to expand the program now that you're officially part of leadership. As they headed to the kitchen, Jamie stopped Louis with a hand on his arm. Why are you really doing this? He asked quietly. And don't say it's because I deserve it or because it's good. For the foundation, what's the real reason? Louis considered the question carefully. Because some debts can never be fully repaid, he finally said. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't try. Jamie studied Louis's face, then nodded slowly. Thank you. Not just for this, but for coming back into my life, into Lily's life. Thank the flat tire, Louis said with a smile, and the gas station attendant who didn't believe I was Lewis Hamilton. I'll send him a gift basket, Jamie laughed. In the kitchen, Lily had set the table and served the pasta with surprising neatness. She looked up as they entered. Finally! I thought you two were going to talk all night. She pointed to their places. Sit. Eat. Then Louis needs to help me with my science project. He promised last week. Did I? Louis asked, taking his seat with a grin. Yes, the one about aerodynamics. You said you know all about that. I might know a thing or two, Louis Deafy admitted. As they shared the meal, laughing and talking about everything and nothing, Louis felt a sense of completeness he'd rarely experienced. His life had come full circle, returning him to the friendship that had helped shape him into the person he was today. In that moment, Lewis Hamilton, 7-time world champion, global celebrity, one of the most successful Formula One drivers in history, knew a simple truth. Sometimes the most important victories happened far from any racetrack, with no trophies and no podium celebrations. Just the quiet triumph of a friendship found, lost, and found again. And the knowledge that, thanks to a flat tire and a chance meeting, two paths that had diverged long ago had finally converged once more. Thanks for joining me till the end. Let me know in the comments from where you are tuning in. Drop your city and country name in the comments. Also make sure to subscribe to this channel if you love Lewis Hamilton. Give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed this heartwarming story of friendship and second chances. See you in the next one.